Hi, I'm Kevin Wachiro. I'm a gay activist from Kilifi, Kenya. I'm also a journalist, I'm a podcaster, and also a writer. And welcome to Pride Afrique 2020, Africa's first virtual Pride Festival. And we're going to have an intergenerational conversation with a fantastic group of gay men from different parts of Africa. We'll take you to Ethiopia via London. We'll take you to Nigeria via the US of A. We'll take you to Botswana. We'll take you to Pretoria, South Africa, Eldoret in Kenya, and Zambia. Thank you all for coming onto this conversation. And for the sake of the people watching, if you could just kindly introduce yourself. And as you introduce yourself, my first question is going to come in. Tell us briefly about your coming out story, a highlight that stood out for you. And in alphabetical order, we'll start with you, Atol, in Pretoria.
My name is Athol. I'm a hairstylist in Pretoria. I'm 42. My coming out story, I think my parents always knew that I was different. I remember always going to therapists and psychologists. And then in the 10th grade, it was the days just before the internet and email and cellular technologies hit the world. So I had a pen pal who would ask me all sorts of anatomical questions and share some of his anatomical stats with me as well. So one day, I went to sleep over at a friend's house. And the next morning, my mother called me very early at their house, obviously on a landline, hysterical, demanding that I return home immediately. And when I did, she had sneaked into my room and dug out all these letters that this guy had been sending me. And so, you know, there was no way of lying around it. Somebody asks, when your mother reads a letter where someone tells you how big their penis is and asks you how big yours is, there's no way of avoiding the subject. And so I just admitted the fact that I was gay. I was so afraid in that moment that I acted indifferently as a way of protection. And I think because I acted in that way, it helped my family ease into the reality of my sexuality. But it took many, many, many years before I brought a guy home and introduced him. Today, my sexuality is not an issue really. My family knows I think about the world differently. And I don't really see them a lot, simply because I have no interest in worrying about school plays, or I live a completely different life to my siblings. And that's okay. We get along from a distance. And generally speaking, there is peace. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. You mentioned words that I think have sort of dropped off our vocabulary these days, pen pals and landlines. So that just shows you the generational thing that has kicked in. So we move over to Azadi, to someone who's at the point of maybe, would you call yourself a twink bahi? Or a
No. I am definitely not a twink. I am 35. Let's start with that. I am 35. So like I'm way past twink. So my name is Baharu Shwai. Like I'm based in London. I am Ethiopian and I work with the LGBT community. I think so. My coming out story. I'm not sure if I have one, to be honest. Like I don't believe in coming out. Like that personally, like that was my take. Because I've never seen none of my siblings, you know, like was sitting their parents and then telling them, oh, you know, like so and so is the person I love and that I wanted to be with. So like I didn't feel like I had to do that. But how I came out was not by choice, but like more like by force, because I was working as under a pseudonym, Becky Abi, when I was in Ethiopia, and then that Becky Abi name and my registered name was matched, and then someone posted my picture and then my personal information. So that's when, like I had to come out to my family. Yeah, I mean, like it was a bit hard at first, but I think, through time, it got easier. So I think like for me, social media was the way, that I came out.
Thank you very much for that. From Bahi, we move over to someone who is a close friend and is commonly known as Big Homo in Botswana, Kane.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, boys.
Hey.
Yes. My coming out story, if at all I have one, I've always, like many of us, I've always known I was gay when I was young. So the first person, the first family member who knew was my late brother. So he passed 2009, but he knew since I think, 80s and 90s. Okay, maybe let me not say that because the twink might have an idea of how old I am. So, so after him, it was my immediate nuclear family. It was my mother, my sisters. Then from there, before I could gently come out to the other family members, it basically blew up in the mainstream media because back then we had decided to take a case to court. First, the decriminalization case back in the days, not the recent one. So, and then my name became the Motswana gay man. So everything gay basically was tagged to my name. If somebody wants something gay, they say Kane Young Man. So I suppose that's my most simple coming out story. Yeah, and the only thing that stood out from my coming out was my fear of what I would do. You know how when you come out, some people fear what the family will do to them or people around them will do to them. I had the opposite, basically. I feared what I might do to family members, friends, or those people around me the moment I came out and they said something. Because I was raging back then. I had so much anger in me because what I've seen the injustices, I've seen how we're treated, and we're expected to just sit there and be quiet. I'm a Catholic. I grew up, just like I think just like John said, I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic kindergarten, primary school, middle school, and high school. So basically, by the time I was done in high school, I was all Catholic, basically. So having grown as a Catholic child and having to come out as gay, it kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of made me angry in the sense that as I grew up, I started understanding all these homophobic tendencies that the cluster, the religion was portraying, the schools were portraying, the family was portraying. So things started becoming clearer to me. So by the time I made peace with myself, because I had to first make peace with myself, by the time I made peace with myself, I was a raging bull. Basically, I was very angry. I was ready to trample anybody who would stand in my path. So I was more afraid of what I would do to people than I was afraid of what they would do to me. I suppose that's the only thing that kind of stood out.
It's hard to imagine you being an angry person, Kane, but yeah, I guess we're on a journey as we've all gotten to discover. We move over to the region, East Africa, and Festus in Eldoret, Kenya.
Okay, hi, my name is Festus, and My name is Festus Kisa, and I'm based in Kenya, a town called Eldoret. And my coming out story, I don't have a particular okay, I have several instances that I remember of me coming out. I don't remember dates. I don't remember, but I do remember how I felt. And I remember the first time I came out was to my desk mate, and I was in high school. I think I was 15. Yeah, I think I was around 15. Yeah, and we were having.
Festus,
Yes.
Can I disturb you? Did you say your dad's mate or your desk mate? Your
desk mate.
Dad's mate, as in your friends. Okay, I thought you were saying your father's friend. Dad's mate.
No. Oh,
okay.
wow. No.
Sorry about
desk
that.
Mate,
Sorry.
yeah. No, it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. Wow. So my desk mate in high school. So I think we had started sitting together, and we were teenagers, and I think he was telling me things about girls and things, and I was like, so first of all, no. I don't even know what possessed me to actually say those words, but what I'm thankful for is that it became a beautiful friendship, because he was the one person who was kind and gracious and, not weird about, my queerness. And I think other than that, everyone else assumed, but I didn't necessarily come out because, I was hiding and things. And the other coming out, I think, that had to happen was when I was 21 and I was in college. But mostly it was someone who outed me. Someone outed me to my aunt. And then my aunt, and then we had to have a conversation. Thankfully, it wasn't me who had that conversation. It was my roommate at that time, my roommate in college, who was also kind and gracious and, gave me love and understanding. The rest is, there's rumors, and then people are afraid to ask me. And then if you don't ask me, I don't tell. But then when it comes to but as I've grown older, I out myself more often, but mostly to strangers, not to family or dear ones. But I'm thankful that after 21, all the encounters that I've had to come out, so that I don't have that situation of having to sit people down and have that conversation. I think that's really hard. I'm so glad I've not had a chance to sit, loved ones and tell them, so this is who I am and things like that. So that's one of the things I'm fortunate for. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Festus, thank you very, very much. We move over to the USA. We move over to Nigeria via the USA to you, John. If you could briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story before we dive into more conversation.
Well, again, my name is John Adewoye. I'm 60 years old. I'll be 61 end of this month. And I was born and raised Catholic, like Cain. Not only raised Catholics, of course. I went to all Catholic schools and even went to seminary. I was a well-cooked Catholic, thoroughly done, except that I'm gay. And that was a pain I lived with for years, because my awareness of being gay also led to my decision to go to the priesthood. Even though that wasn't the only reason, there were political reasons for me going to the priesthood, there was religious reason, but the central thing was my being gay. And I thought, well, God has got a reason for making me gay, probably as a Catholic priest, to be a Catholic priest, since I was born into a Catholic family. All through my life in the seminary, of course, wherever you gather men, there'll be some gay guys there, and I'll surely be sex there. So I knew some gay guys, and some made it to the priesthood, some didn't make it to the priesthood. But it was when I was in the seminary, actually, that I really dug into the Bible and saw some of these interpretations about who go to heaven and who will not go. And that set me into a kind of rage for heaven in prayer, just make sure God just let me get to heaven, make me gay no more. But I remain myself. But another side of pain started when I saw the interpretation of my church regarding gay people, calling gay pervert, uh, bastardizing the generosity that could come from the heart of a person. The gay people will be someone who will be so kind to you, and at the end of the day, all they're looking for is to exploit you sexually, exploit your children sexually. That was so painful to my heart. As I'm recording now, I'm in the house of a very close friend of mine. I wouldn't normally I will call him my son, and with his family and their children, this man is no gay. But he was close to me from the time I became a priest, and he wasn't the only one. And until I came out, actually, some of them they were so surprised. You know, Father John, gay. So that pain lived so much in me. I wanted to be a straight guy, despite the fact that I was in the priesthood. And that was what brought me to America, where I did all kinds of, went into all kinds of therapy. At the same time, like I found a kind of better understanding of myself. And the therapists I went into eventually empower me to self-acceptance. So I came out first to the church, and my bishop just couldn't understand it. And I had already made up my mind too that if coming out they say no, I'm not going back to the closet. No, the door of the closet is gone, and I will not subject myself to the kind of treatment I saw the church in Nigeria around 2004, from 2003 to like 2007, subject gay people to, gay priests and seminarians to. I was not going to subject myself to that. So when they said no, I decided to move on, because when I came out, I told my bishop I wanted to start a ministry for gay people. And when it was no, I decided to move on. Then I came out to family members in dramatic ways, sent emails to those who have emails, called those who have to be called. My bishop was the one who told my sister. It was just, and I just told myself, no more, I'm out. If I cannot do it in the church, I can do it outside the church. And wherever I go, I make sure I stand out as a gay man. Every walk, and that's how it's been for me. So.
All right. Thank you very much, John. There's something that you said that really resonated with me when you told your bishop you want to be gay no more. I remember walking to see a therapist and telling her, I take this away, fix me. I can't do this. So that, and I'm sure many of us may have touched on that along the way. But I also recognize that not everyone, especially more so here on the continent, has that, for lack of a better word, the privilege of coming out and being visible, like the rest of us. And Storm, if you could just tell us, I'll change the question there for you. I know your journey is different from the rest of us. How is it accepting yourself for who you are as a gay man in Zambia?
Personally, hello, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So personally, it when the story of coming out in the queer spaces is actually mentioned, it doesn't really connect to some of us. It is not a conversation that actually relates to some of us. It's not that you can walk into a family meeting and I'm having a terrible feedback.
Mute, 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 mute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it's not as though you can walk into a family meeting and announce your presence and bring up such a conversation. It is unacceptable. It is not a conversation to have with anyone. Everybody expects you to behave a certain way, to uphold a certain belief. At a particular age, you're expected to do a certain thing that is actually befitting of your sex rather than your gender. And yeah, and talk of orientation is actually even worse than that. So it is something that is particularly non-existent in my country context, and it's heavily religious. Most of it emanates from religious bigotry, and yeah, among others. So, in a nutshell, it is a story each and every one of us would like to have. But the part of the world where I come from, it doesn't happen. But to answer your question on how do you now deal with the emotional basis of coming out and dealing with the stress and the conclusion where you get to know this is where I actually stand. It's the side of an orientation where I stand as opposed to the more acceptable. That takes time. Personally, I was raised like each and every one of my colleagues there. I was raised, not really colleagues, sorry, my fellow friends, in a religious family. My father was a pastor. My mother was a committed member of the church. And of course, that actually sets up a bar. Throughout my childhood, I experienced victimization, basically based on expression. I had to be always guided in one or the other way. As a result of that, I was made to have a certain persona, pursue certain things just to make myself socially accepted, and of which that has a huge mental implication on individuals like me in my context, like in the actual context, where you are forced to do something for the sake of trying to fit in. So that happened throughout my life until the time when social media was born. I'm only 27 years old. Sorry, I'm Storm. I'm 27 years old. I think I rushed into the story without introducing myself. I'm Storm. I'm 27. So that had to come through the time the internet now was more prevalent in our context in sub-Saharan region. That should have been around 2010 when the Facebook platforms were introduced, where you get to link up with certain people via various apps. You are in college, it exposed me to a whole different range of the world. The world in which I knew was evil, I knew was illegal, I knew was disgusting. And yeah, so I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, that briefly, you've given us a slice of your story there. I want to open this up into a conversation that will go across the different ages, from Storm, who's just said he's 27, to John, who's 60. And for those of you, I just want to ask, you had different stories, and to some of us, I forgot, I'll mention my story. I came out, I think, when I was in my late 20s, and I'd sort of come to terms with who I was. I was also a church person, evangelical, but went to a Catholic school, went to an Anglican nursery, a Catholic primary school, a Catholic secondary school, and ended up in a Christian university. And then ended up working for a really secular, if I can use that word here, radio station. and really battled with it. And I think the thing that I was in my late 20s, I got to accept myself because I realized this is just too difficult. And the thing that sort of prompted me to get out of the closet was I got caught making out with a friend in a car by a colleague. So I figured, the cat is out of the bag and there's no point in hiding it, and from then on, if anyone did ask me, I didn't deny it, but to fully acceptance was a journey of, I think, another 3 years where I got comfortable with being myself. We've had words like pen pal, we've had obviously the Facebooks, people being forced out. But guys, I just want to push this out to you. Any questions that, especially the younger folk on this conversation, any questions that you'd want to put forward to the likes of people like John, Kane, Atol, and myself about the time when we were discovering our sexuality without the luxury of social media, without the luxury of the internet?
May I ask? So I think, how do I frame this? So for example, with the work that we're doing, because most of our presence is online, because online is the space that we have to safely navigate, quote unquote safely. And then I hear some people say to us, the more you talk about it, the more you become more visible, the more dangerous it is for us. As in this is a generational gap that I'm talking about. And then but someone has to talk about it. You went through some sort of an experience which we have not heard because we did not have access to internet. We did not have access to a lot of different sources from the continent. And then I don't know, how do you see it? The more visible we are, do you think are we doing a good thing? Do you think are we doing, I don't know, is it a way to go, or is there another way that you can suggest from experiences that you have not, that you have been doing offline? Does that make sense? Yeah.
May I answer?
Yes, please go ahead, Atol.
I think for me, I think the more visible queer people are, the better. I think there's never been a better time in the world to be vocal and visible about who and what you are. I think that the more visible we become, the more socially integrated we become. But this is the opinion of a privileged white person from a country where same-sex marriages are legal, and not from a person living in Africa, where being gay is punishable by law. The reason I actually find myself on this panel tonight is because I met a friend who, up until then, I knew there were people who were persecuted for their sexuality, but it wasn't part of my frame of reference. It wasn't part of my existence until I met this person and my eyes started opening up to the reality that just across the borders of South Africa, there were millions of men and women who were being persecuted for their sexuality. And I guess if I think about people like Storm, people like John, thank God he's found his way out of the prison that he found himself in. But I think that it is a huge risk for anybody who doesn't have the luxury of freedom of expression and freedom of association, and freedom to be who you are. So when I say visibility is a good thing, I speak from my limited experience and understanding. Yeah.
For me, I don't know if is somebody saying something. I can go. Can I go ahead? Okay. For me, visibility is important because it it affords us the platform to sell ourselves. It affords us the platform to show people who we are. In addition to coming out on national media, I had come out at university. The university, I used to be a lifeguard when I was at university. So, and then they were doing a spread about my life as a lifeguard. And when they asked me, what is it that you do when you are not saving lives? I was like, well, I'm involved with the LGBTI organization. That's what I do. And then, so that basically that was me also coming out at university. So that provided visibility to the LGBTI community at university. But at the same time, I basically stood there, and then other LGBTI individuals, especially the young ones or the old ones, different ages, they started avoiding me because now you are seen as Cain, the gay guy who is not at university. Now, walking around campus with Cain means that you will be outed, means that everybody's going to assume you are gay. So the community started avoiding me. But I liked that visibility because it then brought forward people who were struggling with who they are. When the moment they found out that I was gay and I'm at the same institution with them, they took that as an opportunity to step forward and come and talk to me. So for me, I didn't mind that much about the other people ignoring me, but my coming out, it basically provided the visibility for other people to come and ask for an ear, for me to engage with them, for me to talk to them and see how we can help each other, see how we can be friends and all those things. It also, the visibility was, my coming out on national media was also to say to the nation, I know that people are always crucifying the LGBTI community. People are always saying we are delinquents, we are dramatic, we drink, we are misbehaving, all sorts of things. So my coming out was then a dare to the people and say, I am gay. I am not your typical, stereotypical gay person, what you have as a gay person, what you have in mind to be a gay person. And I have my own life. I'm family oriented. So I dare you to find something to use against me to crucify the LGBTI community. So basically, because I knew who I was, because kind of visibility also in a way comes as a form of committing oneself. You are basically committing yourself to say, yes, I am Atol, yes, I am Kevin, I'm committing to be visible for you, all of you guys. And by so doing, you are basically saying, I'm committing to be a role model so that you guys are able to live a better life. So for me, that's what that's what visibility was for me. It's about ensuring that everybody is accessible. Even if things were uncomfortable for you back in the days, the mere fact of people knowing that there is John, mere fact of people knowing that there is Festus, when somebody is going through hardship, they will always think of John, they will always think of Festus, and they, at least that way, they know where to go. They won't end up taking their lives or resorting to other things that might hurt them.
My own brief answer to that is that seeing the young ones on the internet has been source of strength for me to remain visible. I do tell people, when I was growing up, my life was so abstract. It was difficult understanding myself because I saw no one to really relate to. Now, are the young ones on the internet making mistakes? No. I know that when people are able to put face to these discriminations, that sometimes can change people's attitude towards you. A young girl told me of recent that about how her mother, his mother, came to his rescue when police wanted to harass him for being gay in Nigeria. The mother came to his rescue. It was because the guy was openly gay, and the mother was not there to start saying, no, my child is not. But she stood her ground. This is my child. She has not committed a crime. I was really impressed. That has been the only story and the first story of a mother standing up for her child, or parents standing up for her child in Nigeria. Believe you me, I've seen African parents here in America going against their kids who are gay. Here in America. These kids were born here, their parents had been here, all they came for here is the grain, dollars. And they are screwed, no matter what the level of their education, they are screwed as those back home. And it's because of religion. So your being out on the internet is not a mistake. But what are you doing on the internet? That is another. I receive friend requests every day. And funny enough, even when people must have read my profile, he's married. The next thing that you could see sometimes is the picture of a dick popping up. Boom. Or someone's asking me to hook him up, to hook him up as if all that the life of a gay man or a lesbian is sex and nothing but sex. And unfortunate too, that is how we've been characterized. I'm sorry if I've been raw, I'm raw about saying this, but I see it raw, and I don't know how to go. What else? You know. So it's the life. It's kind of it's the opportunity of the time. And I bet you your presence, young and old, on the internet was a big a big tool for my coming out. Right from the time of AOL, Yahoo.com, and all those. I saw a 75-year-old gay man online, and I was like, you mean when I'm 75, I'll still be gay? And I connected with him. I went to his house. He's a white guy. I went to his house. He was like, how did you spend your youthful age? He told me he was in the military during the Second World War and so on. He was married with 6 kids. He came out when his wife died. And internet connected us. So it's the biggest tool of the modern time. Use it and use it wisely. And that is what we're even using now. Imagine all of us from different parts of the world. We can drink without smelling our drinks, but we still rejoice together. I love you all. Thank you.
I hope that sort of gave you some steer, but John said something that really struck well with me when he said when he was growing up, there was no one he could identify with who was gay, you know? And this is a question to everybody, looking back at your own journey, you know? Those of us who did have the internet, I would say we're luckier that you can see visibility, representation. But I'd like each of us to say, who was the person that sort of made you realize that you were different? And how did you come across that picture? Or what was that image that made you realize, maybe there's something different, and where was this image found? And I think it's important to mention where this image was found, just to show our reality for those of us who grew up before the age of the internet. And that, please feel free to answer that.
Thank you.
Well, I have always known I was different. No one really pointed it out. It was pretty apparent to me and to everyone around me. But I think my journey to acceptance started when I met a guy in an elevator in an apartment block I stayed in when I was still, I think it was grade 7, maybe. Something he said, I don't know. I think he was my first crush. I was like going into puberty and, you know, your hormones are racing. And here's this 31-year-old guy who had just moved back from Germany. And he didn't do anything to me, but the way he was so accepting of just how he was really helped me realize that that it was actually okay to be gay, and that I could actually have a lifestyle that I could enjoy. So I think that's kind of the privilege of growing old, I guess, is that we are the torchbearers. We can inspire the next generation. So yeah, I guess that was I still know his name. I used to stand outside his apartment door, wishing he'd walk out of his apartment door. So besotted, I would brush my teeth, giggling at the thought of him. Of course, he was way out of my league, but yeah, you know. And I think to this day, thinking of him brings a smile to my face because it was such a pleasant exchange. Yeah.
All right. I want to bring in people we haven't heard from, either Storm or Festus. If you could, maybe Storm, because we also recognize that it's slightly harder for you in Zambia, but this is something that you can bring yourself into the conversation.
So we're talking about the day before the life before the internet. And I am a 90s baby, but I guess, hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I believe I also resonate a bit more on that. And I think like Anthony had mentioned, people that actually then before the internet and the gaydar, before I knew what gaydar was, there are no people per se that would actually relate to and resonate to say this is a person that would give me hope. But it's like everybody that would be kind to me, every friend that would come towards me and avoid conversations on how feminine they perceived me to be, of how much of seeing me beyond beyond the perception of a person that is actually viewed to be a sexual predator, and all these others are those people that actually made me feel worthy and made me comfortable about myself in each and every form that I was in. So for me, that was actually better. For me, that is where I saw solace in before I just reached that decision to come out to myself. Every kind person that actually came to me, people that did not judge me, people that were friendly to me without any sexual involvement whatsoever. They made me comfortable. My family too also made me comfortable. Because whether the discrimination came from how I expressed myself came from other people who thought my sexuality was different then, of which of course they were right, but the people that made it comfortable were able to network or have conversations with me on a one-to-one basis, of which that was actually better for me.
Festus. Great.
Okay, so about who made me realize that I was gay. Who? Kevin, you grew up in Kenya. So you remember Will and Grace? It used to show on KTN, right? Do you remember Kevin? Yeah, and it used to show, I think it was, I don't know if it was Fridays after the 9 o'clock news. And I remember I used to sit, so we used to watch the TV from my mom's room. And my mom, I don't know, for whichever reason, allowed me to watch that show. Although I think I watched one episode. And and I was like, oh my God, I'm Jack. Yes. I swear, but I think to this show I can't watch. I think to this time I can't watch Will and Grace. Like normally, I'm like, oh. And I think I've told this story. I don't know who I told this story to, but I was like, you know what? I was like, as much as Zach was fabulous, I was like, I want to be Will. I badly wanted to be Will, but hi. So that was when I knew. So basically, that's when I knew I was like, oh yeah, so this is me. And then I think I didn't see other queer people when I was growing up. So even in high school, and I went to an all-boys school, so I used to keep thinking, I'm like, so who's queer among these ones? So in my first year of high school, I would hear stories of, oh, these two are dating, and I would hang out around those people who are supposedly dating, and then they wouldn't hit on me. So it was like, what the fuck? Pardon language. I was like, what is it? So until I think in my second year of high school, that's when someone took an interest in me, but he wasn't identifying as queer. It was more of a, those silly things that, boys with hormones do. So it was more of a, but I remember it was only until that when I was in college or later when I started Googling things. And one of the first things I Googled was, I think GALF, that was the Gay and Lesbian Coalition of Kenya. And the first contact that I met was that, and then I messaged someone, and so I messaged David. I don't know if I messaged or I sent an email, and then David Courier responded. He was, at that time, I think the general manager for GALC. And I think, and he was very kind. Like, I was 21 and I had questions, and and I really wanted someone to provide answers, and he did, and we ended up becoming friends. And I think that's the one thing that helped me realize that I was in a good space, because I just finished college. I was about to start my adult life, and I really wanted answers that I couldn't find that the internet wasn't providing, except porn. So the fact that one of the first people that I looked to, and yeah, so then he became a real person. Then I think being queer in Kenya became a real thing because of someone who was doing it, and he was, and yeah, so that is my story. Yeah.
I'll jump to you, because being the most senior, if I can call you Papa, being the most senior, and this was before cable and before the internet. Who was that person that made you realize, oh, I'm like you, or you're like me?
Yeah. There were many. But not until I got to high school that I started identifying individuals. Though I'll say between age of 9 and 11, I've known some guys we grind on each other. And one particular one, we were just madly in love with each other. And people would say they were friends, but we weren't just friends. We grind on each other, we touch each other, we talk about guys like kids would do. But it was when I was in high school, I met this senior He's a grown-up man now. Of course, I'm grown up too. His name is Lawrence. I won't say his last name. And he took a liking to me. And he was different. He accepted me like my previous young friend. He was the first person I kissed in life. The night we had sex was the first time in life I reached orgasm. Honestly, I didn't even know what that was for real. I thought I was peeing on myself. I thought I was peeing on myself. and after that, I saw this Florence of a man as, yeah, that's another me. And after him, I became more vigilant, and I saw a few other guys. And every year, people will come to school. I'll scout out. My final year, if I know the note, I still know the color of the notebook. I listed all the guys I've had sex with. It was a long list, uh, and but Lawrence made that first impression. He made that first impression. He's still alive. He's somewhere in Lagos.
All right, Bahi, to a country like Ethiopia, where you grew up in, you know, and we know out of all the countries here, I think Ethiopia was the most controlled, is the most controlled state, authoritarian. How did you know and who stood out? Just, yeah.
Well, I think, well, it's the same as Kisa said, like for me as well. I think for me, my introduction was Will and Grace. So, like while seeing Jack and then, like while listening to the storylines, I was like, oh my God, there actually are people like, that exist and happy like me. Because, like me finding out myself is when I was 12, I knew already who I was and then who I was attracted to, but I just didn't act on it. And then I took time off, like proper time off to deal with myself, like to accept myself fully. And then also like, in my head, I'm like, oh, you know what? I need to be financially independent before I start doing anything. So I was working towards that. So anyway, my first introduction, I think I would say, is Will and Grace. And then, as you said, like, Ethiopia is very controlled, very, very highly conservative, as so I think from that point, and then me dealing with who I am, honestly, and then that's why I have the shuka behind me. So like Kenya, honestly, like for me, Kenya is more home because I've learned a lot about queerness and then queer movements and then what queer people looks like, even like to see a person who looks like me with the same kind of skin tone, with the same kind of, at least like something that we can share between like how conservative we are and then like how hostile the spaces can be in that sense. But still, like I've seen like a thriving queer community, and then I think that was more like that gave me the boost. That was more like like I got encouraged. And then I've met other, of course, Ethiopians online, Googling. So Ethiopian gays, I Googled, and then a list of names popped up. So after that, from Ethiopia to East Africa, West Africa, we had the network. Yeah.
Thank you. Kane, what's your story?
I didn't have anybody that I knew that was gay. We didn't have internet, of course. We didn't have books at the libraries that said anything about gay. The media did not say anything about gay. The school, nothing. I didn't even know what the word gay meant until I was old. I was in middle school, basically. So I basically, for me, I had to learn to be gay the way I figured it meant to be gay. So I didn't have anybody to basically light that bulb in my head and to say, oh, I'm definitely like that person. I'm definitely gay. all I knew was that I was not gay because I kept delaying coming to terms with myself, where you start saying, I'm still young, let me wait for teenage years. And then when you get to teenage years, so you end up saying, no, maybe I'm controlled by hormones, let me wait for teenage years to pass. Then you get to 20, you're still gay. 21, you find men and calves, and you can't stop yourself when a man passes, and you just can't help it. 21, 22, 23, and it's like, okay, it's not going to change. So I had my first relationship, my first sexual experience 2 months shy of my 24th birthday with a man. Before that, I had never been sexually active. I've never done anything because I was scared. I didn't know what the hell was going on. There was no place for me to find out what is going on. All I knew was that the Bible was saying that if a man sleeps with another man, they will be stoned to death. And they didn't say anything about gay. They just said that over and over again at school, at Sunday school, and all those things. So unfortunately, I didn't have anybody to help switch on that light for me.
This is now to Bahi, Festus, and Storm. You have John, Kane, and I. What would you like to know about growing up as queer, as gay, in a time before the internet, in a time before the relative freedom that exists, not just on the continent, but in the world now?
So I have a question. It's not really a question. It's just a random string of thoughts. Whoever will answer, it will be great. So, guys, I think currently people are giving us, the younger generation, a hard time. You're like, oh, in our days, our relationships lasted longer, things like those. And then also, when people would meet with the strangest, under the strange occurrences they would meet, they would stay together. So someone would go like, oh, I was in a bus stop, then this person looked at me, winked at me, then took me home. As in, of course, apart from those stories of violence and sadness, but is it really true that, relationships during your days lasted? Or that the dating was, better? Like, is it true?
Okay. I don't know. You have to excuse my French. That's bull crap. There is no such thing. The thing is that relationships are not like there's a form. They're not like the pan that you use to make bread. You expect bread to come at the same length, same breadth, and same depth. So all relationships are like in food. You preparing food, where you walk in and you pick what you want and you start cooking. So you have to do it according to your heart's desires. Unfortunately, the thing is that relationships sometimes don't last because we have a tendency to bring in rules and regulations around relationships that have nothing to do with us. Relationships are meant to be personal. Only the two of you can bring your own rules. It doesn't matter. Sometimes people will tell you, oh no, you guys are moving too fast when you get married after a year of meeting, or when you move in after a week of dating. Example, my husband and I met in August, and then in November we moved in together. That's super fast, according to many people. Many people. We met, and then in a few days he met my family. So people will be like, no, you have to wait for 6 months. You have to wait for a year before you introduce your partner to the family or friends or whatever the case may be. So unfortunately, there is no set boundaries for relationships to last. The only thing will be for you to make your own rules. Because what is applicable to Cain is definitely not going to be applicable to Festus, because what I see as priority, you don't see as priority. So unfortunately, back in the days, the thing is that also, I suppose maybe there might be an issue of back then we are not necessarily out in public. Nowadays, people are seen out in public. There is social media. So that means that you're, in a way, putting a strain in your relationship because you are always out there. You are always sharing yourself, information about yourselves and your relationship. And sometimes, truth be told, social media, the way I'm always advertising Festus. I'm always saying, oh, Festus is so wonderful. He's doing this and that for me, or yada, yada, all those things. And Kevin might be interested. It's like, oh, I also have to get me some Festus. I also want to enjoy what he's enjoying. So that in a way, it kind of makes things a bit much more strenuous now in terms of relationships, but that doesn't take away our power as people who are in relationships to control it. The bottom line is you have to make your own rules. Don't bring any external rules into your relationships. It's yours and you have to make your own rules. That way it will last the way to the duration you want.
All right. Anyone else with anything to an answer for Festus? At all, John?
Yeah, let me jump in and chip in a little bit. Growing up, there was no clear-cut relationship I could identify. And the painful part of it for me in later years was that I was so caught up with the religious things and so mangled by the reality of my emotion that I'll kiss a person, have sex with a person, show love to a person, and never talk about what we did together. We exchanged gifts and never were we able to say why we exchanging these gifts, why did we come so much endeared to each other. And it was all because of the big cloud in the community, the lack of presence, visibility of our own type of love, even though they were there. For me, even though I could see in some cases, even within my family, the kind of closeness I saw between myself and the man I love, even as a priest. Yet there was no discussion about it. So there's the shroud of secrecy for me growing up in Nigeria up to recent time when, thank you, Jesus, we have internet that blew up everything. That shroud of secrecy made dating during that time very, very difficult. And now to even go to the extent of marriage is still difficult, even when people date over there or in many African countries or some parts of the world too. Dating is also it still remains like that. It can go to the level of marriage, which America, I would say, has given me the opportunity of getting into. So I'll just leave it at that so that we have more people to talk.
I think
I'm gonna.
Can I add something? Also, maybe it's worth noting first as that back in the days, we didn't have all these gadgets. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have all of these things. So when John and I would get home, it means we'd sit down and talk to each other, or read newspapers, or watch TV, or listen to the radio. Unlike now where we have gadgets, so that kind of take away attention. So we don't necessarily give each other attention. So, and that's kind of something that puts a strain in relationships nowadays. It doesn't matter the generation, whether you are a young generation or older generation, it puts a strain, equal strain on all relationships.
Okay, thank you for that addition. I'm going to pull Storm in. Storm, you've got four older gays here. Do you have a question to us?
Yes, I do have a question. Are you able to hear me?
Oh,
Yes,
clearly.
Yes. So my question resonates on first and foremost. The first question, I've got quite a number of questions for you guys. Curiosity.
Okay.
Curiosity and the ability to ask. I remember when I was young, when I first heard the term called gay, it was when I was seated watching a soap with my parents and my siblings. A South African soapy called Insindingo, which had a gay character called Steve. And I once asked my dad I asked my dad a couple of times, what does the term gay mean? And every time he dodged the question. So in relation to the order, did you have a particular time at which you would ask your parents or people the curiosity nature to ask before if something is happening new thing, or it was just more of internalized feel? And the second question comes from the experiences I've had with the older folks that I've interacted with. These are people that will tell me I got married because at the time I was young, or at the time I reached that particular age, it was only expected for me to do. There was no one I could actually relate to. Of which, for me, I think that is sorry to say, it's nonsense in my in my own opinion, where one decides to use that as a justification and say, no, I married because at a particular time it was things. So I want us to be now together, but you still have your wife back home. So the notion then was people were then forced to get married because at a particular time they could not have or identify a certain character. Then what happened to their actual thing? The question then would be, were they able to fully or partly relate their emotions, or I don't know. I guess you understand what I'm actually saying. And thirdly, I'd actually find out in the same line. Now that basically where I'm coming from, now that this person is married, this is their reality. They are now married. They have this family of kids, even my age.
Mm-hmm.
Close to my age or over my age. What is then the status for them now? Somalia, Nigeria, Malawi, Zimbabwe, which are heavily criminal, where monogamy and exclusive relationships are an issue for us. So I would want to find out basically on that one.
Okay, gents. At all, do you want to respond to the questions?
Oh, okay. I can do.
No,
If I got
John, if you don't mind, well, let's go to Athol as well, just to, we haven't heard from him
Oh,
before we come back to you, please.
Okay.
Mhm.
I never had to ask my parents what gay mean. I pretty much understood what it meant. My mom had gay friends, so I was aware of the fact that it was possible for two guys to be attracted to each other and live as a married couple. However, as I became more at ease with my sexuality, questions around what it meant to me to be gay arose. I remember there was a time just after I came out when I was expelled from hostel, from boarding school, basically, because I was gay. Not because I had done anything, but just because the principal was afraid that I would corrupt the other boys. And these kind of experiences make you question whether you are doing the right thing or not. So there were those kind of questions for me. And another question was, why the hell didn't I like every man I saw? Because I thought that because I was gay, I don't know where I got the idea, but because I was gay, I needed to like every guy I saw. And this just wasn't my experience. So these are the kind of small discoveries that I had to make as a boy. With regards to guys getting married while they're gay and they have kids, I can't really say anything about that. I don't understand what it's like to be an adult and be in the closet. I'm fortunate. I was out at a very early age, and I grew up in a country where generally, even though I was sometimes viewed as an oddity, it was okay-ish to be different. And because I'm a hairstylist, I get away with murder. It's kind of expected. So thank God for that. I milk it. I do. And I get to pay my bills by milking it. So that's cool. So, I feel, I mean, I don't think it's an easy thing. There are other people involved in this whole situation, kids and wife and families. It's not easy for anybody. And I feel sorry for those guys because I can just imagine the weight on their shoulders. We live in a time where being gay is more and more acceptable. You can actually say to your mother, I'm not going to marry that chick because I like her boyfriend. You know, previously those weren't options available. Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in briefly. Storm, my experience was there were a couple of teachers in my high school who were, there was one, my English teacher was slightly effeminate. And back then we used to say, oh, he's a homo. And we all knew he was homosexual. So there was no one who told us that. It's like, oh, this, and for us then homosexual meant effeminate, and probably likes other guys. But so there was no way, and my parents did have a few gay friends. We never spoke about it, but we knew that these were guys who were different. But we also grew up in a time where there was no way I could have asked my parents that kind of question. I think because there was a lot of shame that I was carrying about my own sexuality, about being different. So there was that. And briefly to touch on the marriage question, the marriage issue that you brought up, I think that's why visibility is important. For some people back then, the people who we saw were mostly white, mostly white, British, American, who were gay. There were no Africans on the big screen or on the magazines who Africans or black people who are out and gay that we could say, oh, okay, this is normal. And some people did expect the emotions to have disappeared by 24 and maybe may have decided to get married, hoping that those emotions would disappear. And those were the lies that we had in our heads or were taught to us. So my advice is go easy on the guys who have found themselves married to women or in situations like that. Because man, when you don't have any visibility, when you don't have any reference points, when you don't have people to talk to, sometimes you think you're the only gay in the village. I'd like to throw Kane and John.
Absolutely, I like that ending. The only gay in the village. So, I mean, the older generation. I mean, it's from many of us, especially people from back in the days. We are from a certain era where it didn't matter, heterosexual or gay or bisexual or whatever the case may be. It was kind of tabooed for you to talk to parents about relationships. We did not talk to parents about relationships at all, whether it was a man and a woman, a man and a man, or whatever the case may be. And from an era, most of us did not have TVs. We did not have running water and electricity. So that started coming in the late 90s. That's when we started kind of having development, and then internet coming in the first half of the 2000 somewhere there. So the lack of opportunity to discuss your feelings with your parents in a way kind of it restricted you asking. The fact that Kane, as a heterosexual person, you're maybe your heterosexual brother, your older brother, cannot talk to the parent about his girlfriend. His girlfriend cannot come into the yard when the parents are at home. So that on its own built on you. You didn't have to be told about it. You learned for yourself. You learned by seeing what is happening. So it was the same thing. And when your parents say certain things about certain things, the way like when they talk about the Bible and all those things, so it kind of restricted you asking parents about anything that might ruffle the feathers. You always tried to avoid that because you didn't want to make yourself uncomfortable. You didn't want to make everybody uncomfortable. And you didn't just want to get yourself into trouble because you knew if you ask, it was going to be a huge deal. And it didn't help that back in the days there were no gay characters. In South Africa, things might be a bit different, but in other countries, the content that the national televisions were getting, they made sure that they didn't have gay characters. They made sure that the series and other things did not have gay characters. If at all they did, the gay character was minimal, and also sometimes there was some kind of ridiculing involved to the character. So we didn't necessarily have a good reference point to use. And like the other guys have said, same thing with relationships. We didn't have any prominent gay individuals to model ourselves after, to look up to say, okay, so this is what it means to be a queer man. You can actually have a fruitful and meaningful and loving relationship with another man. Yeah, so I suppose that's my 2 cents.
John, I'll come to you briefly.
Me?
Yeah. If you could if you have anything to contribute to this, to Storm's question.
Well, one thing that have been said out, I'll still repeat, is that we need to be sympathetic with our fellow gay guys and even lesbians who find themselves in heterosexual marriages, particularly those of my age, talk of from 40 up. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be sympathetic with those who are in their 30s who find themselves in heterosexual marriage. But I want to encourage those of you in your 30s. You are existing at a different time. I bet you, I don't know what will have happened if I am your age this time around, but judging by the opportunity before me, I think I'll be as open as I am now. Because even when I was your age and I wasn't fully out open, I was not out openly, it was at the same time apparent. And that gave me a lot of, a lot of stress in my life. Generally speaking, I'll say it is time for us to show compassion for those who find themselves in marriage, and at the same time, it is time for us to stand up with to stand up courageously and put ourselves where we need to be. It's not easy. I know it. Nigeria is 40 years in jail. But I look at Uganda, I see people really fighting. And if I think in Malawi, we are now respected and recognized. Is it Malawi? I think it's somewhere around that area. People took their case to court. The other day, the Ugandans went to court for
Botswana, actually.
Botswana. Thank you, my brother. You know, you say you're from Africa and you don't know African countries. That's what poverty causes. We don't get to travel around. The other day, the Ugandans took some people to court. I think the police, and they came out with some justice for themselves. I think we're on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Now I'll flip the coin now and ask the older gentlemen on this conversation whether they have any questions for the younger gentlemen or the younger folk on this conversation at all. Would you?
Yes. Okay. So let me just first say this. I am having a revelation at this stage of the game. I didn't think that in the rest of Africa there would be such a huge selection of people who are outrightly gay and loud and proud. And I have to commend you guys on your bravery. I think it's so awe-inspiring. What question would I have for you? It's two-sided. First of all, what kind of, how would you like to see the gay agenda unfolding in the next, let's say, decade in Africa? And secondly, what would your role in that be?
All right. Thank you very much. Festus Storm Bahi. What would you like to see for the queer agenda? I'll broaden it up into just the gay queer agenda. And what role? I know because each of you are activists in your own right. Yeah, this should be an easy one.
Can I go? Well, first I wanted to say, like, well, thank you for sharing your experiences first, you know, like from the other side, and then now the spotlight is on our side. So I think for me, two things, I guess. The first thing, you know, like, I do not want us to be a political debate agenda for any political party in the next like 10 to 15 years. We just have to live our life. They should leave us alone completely. Like when a president is coming to power, like they should not be, like saying, oh, I'm going to be for, or like, against the LGBT. We should not be a discussion. We should be allowed to live our life as any human. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, honestly, I think this is a wish. And then this is one of the questions that I have on your side. So I wanted to see an African queer stories collectively from the continent, from back in the days, from the internet, before the internet age, and then how you understood things, how we lived our life, so that we have it documented, things that we can pass on to the next generation, because there was a discontinuation because of colonialism, right? So a lot of things were like erased, and then that's why like we had to struggle now to say we existed thousands of years ago, we existed hundreds of years ago. I do not have to justify that my kind of community existed for thousands of years. So I think it would be amazing to see if we can compile stories and then humanize and then glorify our fights as one continent.
Beautiful answer, Bobby. Thank you very much. Festus, Storm.
Okay, so where do I see the queer agenda in 10 years? Wow. I think, these are simple and hard questions at the same time, because, because in my head I would say what I want personally, but given the scope of work that you're doing right now is, I would really want to see queers loving each other. Like that's our gay agenda. Like our gay agenda should be loving each other, because currently there is so much division in the spaces that you exist in, and like I feel like we just need to start dismantling what we have right now and building something that accepts and affirms everyone. Because as much as a lot has been done to get here, we have also usurped a lot of heteronormativity and things. And what I really like about the current generation is that people are finding different ways of being queer, and they're defining things for themselves. Like people are no longer sticking to the People are no longer sticking to the binaries that were created for us to survive. I realized maybe at that time the language and the whatever was done was necessary, but now I like how younger people are saying, I'm a gay man, I could be a trans man, or I could do this, or I could have this and this. And I think that's really important for us. So I see in the next 10 years, I see a lot of self-expression and identity. And I'm also just praying for acceptance for everyone. What do I see my role in this? I'll be on the sidelines championing for self-acceptance, because I've noticed that when people accept themselves, it becomes easier for them to define who they are. Then they become so okay with, they don't even fight. They don't fight for things. We have noticed that when people are okay and they have coping mechanisms to deal with, life's issues and navigating spaces, they become at ease and able to live their lives, So, and when that happens, we start unlearning the things we did to survive. Now we start, living. So I think that's where I see ourselves in the coming years, where we're just all about accepting each other and loving ourselves, deeply, without limiting ourselves to what we were told we can or we can't be.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Festus. Beautiful. Storm, do you want to respond? If you have a response?
Yes, I do. Yes, I want to respond. Yes. The next 10 years. Just like Festus, I actually like what Festus actually mentioned. There's a lot of division and more of conflict between the agenda, between the older generation and us, the millennials. And primarily that has to do with the approach that is taken in as far as our activism is concerned. I liked when he said, I want to see the whole spectrum or the community of LGBTI all united and all across generation lines. I had a conversation not so long ago in activist spaces where a queer men of past generation will actually pick on us men and say we are too we're too not too vocal, aren't made too more too loud and too aggressive in as far as making our point heard. But the argument has been because they are too lazy and are sitting backwards. So there's been a disconnect within the agenda of while others want to be less visible, while others want to be more visible. So yes, I'd want to see that reconciliation or a form of unity of purpose. Let's have one agenda. Let's network and let's push it off. Because in the next 10 years, in the next 10 years, we'll all be pretty odd. We'll all be rated past the other generation, and I guess we'll all be part. I guess we'll join you, or we'll be the part of. Yeah. So it's so like Festus mentioned, it's us loving each other, us unifying in purpose. And what is my role in doing that? I guess I am there to places which promote that, just like this one. I guess that is my role in the whole agenda. So yeah, more loving each other, have a unified purpose, and push our agenda forward, our visibility forward. Let people not be spotted for being too flamboyant when they're supposed to be restrictive of themselves. Because those are the challenges that we actually have from the older generation. You're too vocal. You should loosen up. You're too visible. Tighten up. Do you want to bring the suffering of your generation into mine? No. So that is I guess that is what I would like to see.
Fantastic, mate. Yeah, be you, mate. Be you and be proud. And to those of you who are younger than us, I keep flying the flag. Keep flying the flag. You know, a lot of us still need to be seen, in however shape or form, and how you want to express yourself. There's a question that has been brought up, and this goes. It mostly goes up to us who are older, but generally, how did we find sex? You know, changing tact a bit. You know, before the Grindr days, before the internet. You know, how was that space accessible? Yeah, that's a question that was thrown at us, and I'll just bring my own experience. The eyes have it. That's all I'm saying. It was all about the eyes. Very random, you know. Open the eyes, and there was a lot of cruising that I used to do. I just found myself on the streets of Nairobi, just walking up and down and hoping that someone would see you. I come from a time where, because of that, there's a lot of public sex that also happened. You know, public sex in public toilets, in forests, and sometimes you just went with you trusted good old traditional gay guy. It was in the eyes. So I don't know whether John, Big Kane, and I were gonna add into that.
Well. You know, as I said, growing up, there was no real model of I saw no source of connect, and all the same, I could see a guy and kind of know that this person could be like me, and that may draw me closer to the guy, or the guy got drawn close to me. And that being said, I'll still tell you that there were a number of times I had a wrong crush that almost crushed me, especially my high school and when I was in the seminary college. There were a number of times I had crushes that almost crushed me, you know, but just by the fact that I just love men, and I, you know, it's a kind of quick thing, and sometimes I suspect this person could be, you know, and it will not be so. It was like walking in the dark. Then you stumble at somebody, and I try to figure out, does he have eyes? Okay, he's got a neck, and he's got a stomach, and he's got a waist. So now things are changed. It's a kind of it's a different age. It's a different age, and especially during that time I was talking of, that always put fear of being outed in me. Oh my God, I had that. I hope this person will not go and talk about this to somebody and say that I fixed my gaze so much on his pants, or you know, not so too close to him. That was, but now things are kind of different. Things are different. Things are different. Let us.
Right.
We are in the age of light. Live in the light.
Okay, do you want to respond?
So I'm having seen a moment. What was the question again?
How did you hook up? What ways were there of
Ah,
hooking up before
yes.
the internet?
Well, it's all in the eyes. It's all in the eyes. Well, at least back then, I prided myself in knowing that I had a high class gator. So that's how that's how I did it. You just look at each other, and your eyes are communicating, and then you go somewhere, you sit, and then you iron things out. You talk things out. Yeah, and otherwise, back in the days, also when you had a crush on somebody, you liked somebody, you wanted to hook up with somebody, all you needed was you just had to make sure that it doesn't end in the wrong hands. Otherwise, you're going to be a mockery of the whole neighborhood or class or whatever the case may be. You committed things to paper, and to show your feelings, say I love you, this and that, and let's be boyfriends and all those things. And you also had to be discreet when you issue it. Otherwise, if you give it where other people can see, he gets a bit, I don't know whether it's intimidated, especially those ones who are not out, who are still not comfortable with themselves, or who are not gay. The moment you do that, then you end up getting beat. So you had to, that's all we did. Either it's in the eyes or pen and paper.
Ato, if you mind chiming in, please.
My experience is a bit different. Well, first of all, in high school, I used to bunk PT class and meet guys in the typing class, and get it on in school. And then I grew up in a large coastal city in South Africa, and we lived right on the beachfront. So I would go cruising the beachfront, go into the public showers, you know, shower way too long, hoping for some come along and bite my hook, quite figuratively. And then when I came to Pretoria to study, I would go clubbing, we'd go cruising in malls, and there were a few private or public parks where you could go in the evening and you'd be sure to find someone to do whatever you wanted to do with. Yeah, this was now like but late 90s, way before any of the things you have today.
Gentlemen, sadly, we'll have to wind this down. We've been at this for close to 2 hours. And Anna, thank you so much for taking the time. But in closing, it's a question I'd like each of you to respond to. This is Pride Afrique, the first virtual Pride Festival for the continent. What's your dream for a queer Africa? Atol asked, the younger folks, what do you want to see in 10 years? When we look at a crystal ball, what do you want to see happen? What's the queer Africa that you see, that you would like to see, rather? And yeah, I'll start with you, Storm. Storm, are you there? Okay. I'll go over to you, Bahi.
Hey, he's here.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, so back to you then. Yeah.
Okay. What is the queer Africa I envision? Across all generation lines, I envision queer Africa that is actually united, that is actually strong, that is actually resilient, that is actually supports each other and is actually nurturing each other. Besides intergeneration wise, I envision a queer Africa where divides of race, color does not exist, among others. I envision a queer Africa where religion is not a basis at which stigma and discrimination is actually imposed on people. I think that is a queer Africa actually envision.
Thank you, Baba. Bahi.
Okay, so for me would be, again, to see a queer Africa that lives in dignity and respect that it deserves as a human. That's the one thing. And then also at the same time, I want us to move from survival to living to a certain extent, because now most of us are like in survival mode, and then that's not, like how a human, like a respected human like any other should be living. So like, I want us to practice more towards the living and then happy and then very loud, very united, very out and proud queer community in Africa.
All right, thank you. John. John, can you hear us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear.
We may have.
Oh, yeah. Well, in the next 10 years, part of my, I'll say I have two dreams, or let me say two expectations, which I want to see realized in the next 10 years. One of them is to have a good population of African LGBTs, white, black, who are economically viable, economically independent, and economically relevant. At the same time, openly gay. The second one is not too far from that, is to see some of these openly gay people also in politics, shaping structure of things, not just for LGBT community in Africa, but generally. I look at my own country, Nigeria. it's always like a chaos to me, right from time. And I believe the chaos in Nigeria currently cannot be fixed by people of my age, but the generation growing up after me. So if the LGBT people in Nigeria would, and across Africa, age 20 something to 30 something, would take the bull by the horn and be more politically informed to restructure things in the next 10 years, I want to be alive to enjoy that. If not, I'm dying. No, until I'm dead.
Yes, thank you, John. Festus.
My vision for queer Africa is happiness. How do you see us happy? And how we get to that is, whichever way I just want to see happiness, because I mean, we have suffered enough. Like, we should just be happy. Yeah.
Ato?
Okay, I think for me, firstly, the same thing I wish for interracial relations is that we will see each other as human beings before we see each other as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Festus touched on something that is quite poignant for me, and that is that even within the queer community, there's a lot of discrimination and judgment. He's a top, he's a bottom, he's trans, she's not, he's black, he's white, he's femme, he's straight acting. And we forget to recognize that we share one thing, and that is humanity. So I would like to see more of that manifesting. And I would also like to see us supporting same-sex relationships more. Straight people have the church and all kinds of institutions supporting their relationships. We don't have those kind of institutions. So we have to create those kind of systems for ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Kate, Baba.
Okay. My dream for queer Africa is basically for us to have very prominent leaders who are queer, political leaders. It would be nice. I mean, I can dream. It would be nice if we can get a president who is gay, or ministers or members of parliament who are gay, or even chiefs who are gay, because that will be very instrumental in changing attitudes, especially the chiefs, especially with the older generation. The other dream is the growth, visibility, and prominence of queer families, where a husband and a husband can have family, can have 2 kids, 3 kids, 7 kids, 10 kids. A wife and a wife can do the same. Individual queers having their own families, and it not being such a huge issue. The other dream, I mean, I'm just dreaming here. The other dream is for religion to lose its power, for that grip, the religious grip that it has in the African continent, to be reduced drastically, because it is such a detrimental thing. It's our Achilles heel, basically. It's the one thing that is kind of destroying our continent at the moment. And then the other dream is basically for all of us, the queer community in Africa, for us to be even much more hard-headed and resilient. Hard-headed in the sense that being visible, not shying away from any possible repercussions being visible, being audible. I know in other countries there's like death penalty, like countries like in Mauritania, and you don't get to see the queer community in such countries. So it would be nice if that happens in our lifetime.
As you were speaking there, Kane, my heart was bubbling. Yeah, I hope it happens in our lifetime, you know. And I'll just throw it. I look forward that we will have that the rights of every queer person will be part of the AU Charter, you know, that will speak for the continent. Let's just dream widely, you know. I look forward to say, you know, guys, I'm going for queer Bamako, I'm going for Pride Bamako, and we'll be there. You know, our Pride Mogadishu, and we'll be there. I hope in 10 years' time that things like that will be normal. You know, that when there might be trans presidents or trans ministers, trans people who are African and visible, celebrating this continent and fighting for this continent. So let's keep dreaming, let's keep dreaming, let's keep hoping. We're on to something. Bahi, Atol, Festus, Kane, Storm, John, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. It could have gone on, but thank you so much for being part of this dream to see a more representative Africa. This is just the beginning. Thank you, Pride of Freak, and have a lovely weekend wherever you are. And keep dreaming, keep fighting, keep hoping. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Asanteni. Bye.
Thank you, David and your team. Thank you, Kevin, for being the moderator.